Subscribe for Reddit's controversial opinions. People with a dark sense of humor are less depressing than people without one. People with a dark sense of humor understand that life doesn't have to be serious. That just because something like cancer is a massive problem in the world that takes the lives of a couple of thousand each year, it doesn't mean that you can't have a laugh about it. Why would you want to feel sad? Making jokes about sad topics is the easiest way of protecting yourself from the sadness that comes from it. Making jokes about pedophilia and such is just a way of getting out of the mindset that the world is a shit and miserable place. It's taking the darkest things imaginable and making them less depressing to look at or think about. If you don't like that, then continue being a miserable fuck. I, however, will continue to laugh and enjoy myself. People with dark senses of humor are the most down-to-earth realists I have ever met. If there are any spelling mistakes, please correct me. There was this one joke that made me laugh, and I do like dark jokes. Here goes. What starts with M ends in a ridge, and is a man's favorite thing? Miscarriage. That joke never gets old like the child. I feel that, but I feel like there's a fine line between having a dark sense of humor vs. just trying to be edgy. I absolutely love dark humor, but a lot of the times I find myself cringing at things that are blatantly made just for shock value. Dark humor is just one of many coping mechanisms. Everyone reacts to things differently. Have a dark sense of humor, but don't call people out for not enjoying that kind of humor. XDPPL's skin shouldn't be paper thin, but they're allowed to not laugh at certain things. Having a dark sense of humor doesn't mean you have to be dark. Relax, fam. Dark humor has ruined my ability to find any funny unless it's in bad taste. What's the difference between a bag of cocaine and a baby? Eric Clapton wouldn't let a bag of cocaine fall out the window. Having a dark sense of humor often gets confused with just being an apathetic asshole, though. I find people who have a darker sense have humor easier to talk to. They don't bullshit around an issue if they're also willing to joke about it because they understand nuance. Plus, having a dark sense of humor is a good release. It's like that joke Daniel Tosh made about rape while he was doing his stand-up, and then some woman in the audience interrupted his set to talk about how rape is never funny, so Tosh replies, "Wouldn't it be funny if someone raped her right now?" The joke isn't that rape is funny. The joke is that in this perfectly set up circumstance where this woman is complaining about rape not being funny, Daniel then immediately makes a funny/offensive rape joke right back at her. We understand the absurdity and disgust about rape, which is what makes it that much better. I'm sorry that I had to explain the joke, but there are too many uptight people out there who can't handle a little offensiveness in their lives, who are also just looking for outrage. These same people can't separate what a comedian actually believes, and what they just want to joke about. I don't know, I've got a dark sense of humor and I'm still depressed as fuck. There's a difference between having a good sense of humor, whether it be dark or otherwise, and being unable to read a room/being socially unaware/purposefully ignorant. A good joke is a nudge and a wink, not clobbering someone over the head with extremes. I'm saying this cause there's reasons outside of people being prude or soft to dislike a bit of humor. Side note, /generalization, British humor is much more dark in general than American humor. I find it hilarious that Americans can be so easily entertained by a few edgy jokes when it's just the norm here. Downside of that is Americans tend to take things too seriously and miss the sarcasm a lot. Everyone's different, but personally, when something goes seriously wrong with health or whatever else, I prefer to have friends and family who rip into me and make jokes about it rather than being worried and fussing over me. It makes it feel not so serious and scary. I return the favor, of course. I'm forever teasing Mum about difficulties she has since having a major stroke a few years ago, and she prefers it that way too, whereas it's always other people getting offended on her behalf for some reason. First and probably most minor example would be when I went to see her in hospital the day after it happened and she couldn't move or talk much at all, so after giving her a hug when I was leaving, told her it'll all be okay Mum, just keep a stiff upper lip. Oh, well, you know what I mean. And she just rolled her eyes and laughed. Well, Her eyelid twitched and she gurgled a bit. Close enough. I think there are plenty of qualified people to deal seriously with people's problems. It's good to have some balance to that to let you forget how bad things are sometimes. R/veterans have entered the chat. My favorite is when you tell one of those jokes that are supposed to be not funny and everyone laughs. I would say that they're equally depressing. The whole point of humor is to take messed up shit and make it funny. Many just don't get that. They think because laughing is a joyful emotion that jokes are too. I work for an emergency service. It's universally accepted that dark humor works in our field. If you don't have it, give it a few years and you'd be making fun of death with the rest of them. I'm sorry, but someone else's tragedy doesn't have to be my mental burden. Dark humor is like food, not everyone in the world gets it. My mom died of cancer, and literally only a few months after her death me and my dad laughed at Ricky Gervais make a cancer joke. The not so long ago, we were watching the newest episode of The Good Place and a character, Jason, makes a joke along the lines of my mom was killed by Fluffy, that's what we call the alligator in our pond. Just kidding, it was cancer, and we both fucking laughed so hard at that. Less depressing, but probably more depressed. Either I cry about my life or laugh about it. I'd prefer another reason to laugh, tbh. What's the difference between 10 dead babies and a Ferrari? I don't have a Ferrari in my garage. I typically disassociate myself with people who don't have a somewhat dark sense of humor. If I don't, I risk insulting people because they don't fucking understand that it's a joke. Agreed, but context matters. You shouldn't make Holocaust jokes in a Holocaust museum or memorial. If you're not laughing, you're crying. I joke about terrible things because that way I am removing power from them. Rape jokes are funny, not because rape is funny, but precisely because rape is not funny. Same goes for racist jokes, or jokes about tragedies. People who take the stance that an inappropriate or uncomfortable topic even being mentioned in a joke makes the joke supportive of that topic are weak people who allow those topics to have power over them. I think it's not working. Upvoted. I agree. We all die someday, nobody knows the future. What's the point of being a stickler when you can be happier? Sometimes some gallows humor is good for the soul. One time I was talking to my psychiatrist and I was mentioning about how me and my friends have quite dark, fatalistic humor, and she seemed angry at me or just really concerned. This is normal for me and she made it seem alien. I don't get how people don't understand it. Ida. People who can find humor in their own darkest moments too. That's some inner strength. I'll have to disagree. I have a very dark sense of humor, but I take 6 pills a day, most of them for depression. My mom used to say that we should joke about everything because otherwise there would be no democracy. I explained memes to her and she really liked them because it seems like a good way to spread opinions and show empathy. When she said everything, she did not mean cruel things, but leaders, war, death, and things like that. Dark sense of humor is like legs. Either you have it, or you don't. I've had cancer since 2011, in active chemo for the last 4 years. You do not want to bring up death, dying or cancer around me or my husband. We are terrible. We've made people gasp. I mean, what else are you going to do? Cry? PSH. I got no time for that. Life is not easy. Being easily offended in pretty much any regard is just a form of weakness. How are you supposed to deal with anything in life if you can't even deal with the things people say? Having a sense of humor doesn't mean you have to find the joke funny, you just need to have a sense that a joke is trying to be made, and most of the time I can appreciate just the effort of a joke. Positivity in general is just going to attract more people. Most of us would like to bounce back, not just cling to the ground. I'm split on this one. Satires by Jonathan Swift, himself Irish, about Irish children being fed to the English is consciousness raising. Jewish comedian Mel Brooks' satires about mock glorifying Nazis also has dark humor about it. Point being, dark comedy works only in very specific circumstances. It's very easy to look like a terrible person if you don't do it right. You certainly shouldn't just rashly jump into morbidity for the sake of sounding edgy and all that stuff. I have a dark sense of humor, but when I have a really bad depressive episode that usually fades away. I totally agree. I think dark sense of humor is just a side effect of something few people have. It's just kind of a looser grip on life, I think. I have it, and I've never explained where it came from exactly. I've almost died a handful of times. I think maybe as that happened I cared less and less about shit a lot of people obsess over. Nothing really bothers me, not death, not life, not anything. I will always just figure out a way to enjoy things, and I'm constantly making jokes or talking about things people think are fucked up, but I just see the world as just what it is. I guess the emotional impact of certain things never really bother me, even though I do feel emotion. Like I'm not fucked up per se, I don't act creepy, but I don't believe in limitations. People can do, say, think, fuck, kill anything they want and I wouldn't be surprised nor bothered. Ramifications and consequences will always arise, and I don't want to do anything bad, but when I hear about a shooting, or I heard a friend of mine died, I go through the motions for other people. I don't think of it as anything other than someone was alive, now they are dead, that's that. I don't know, I'm off on a tangent, all this kinda triggered me so I'm thinking out loud. TLDR, I agree, because I think some people are born with a disconnect between dark subjects and their moral outrage. Life is a dark place, with very few bright spots, and rare people understand this. It's good to make light of darkness at every turn. Most people are afraid and insecure with life, despite perceived confidence.